No beam tonight. Nothing happened in this game that surprised me. Well, I will take that back. I thought the Nuggets would score 130. They scored 117. They didn't have to play everyone that much down the stretch. The
Yeah.
Kings only had 96. All right, a couple of things here. When Denver's healthy, they're really good. The Kings had already beat Denver 3 times this year, so you knew Denver was going to be ready. And Ryan, I've talked about this a lot. Domantas Sabonis is the best player on the Kings. De'Aaron Fox is the Kings' most valuable player. Without De'Aaron Fox, the Kings' offense comes to a standstill. It's like they're playing in quicksand. They had a good first quarter, but after that, you saw their limitations offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a different team with De'Aaron Fox. In fact, I would argue De'Aaron Fox brings something to the team that nobody else has on the roster in terms of his pace and change of
Yeah.
speed. So you knew it was going to be a big thing. Mike Malone leaves Jamal Murray in a little bit late in that
Yeah.
game, but you know what? You take 3-1 on the season, Grant, if you're the
Yeah.
Kings.
Okay. So you just mentioned Fox and you mentioned Jamal Murray. They're kind of mirror images of one another. I know that they have Nikola Jokic, but you saw what happened against the Kings when Denver does not have Jamal Murray on the floor for 2 of the losses this year. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have De'Aaron Fox on the floor, the Kings would not win 40 games. If he were to miss the whole year, the Kings would maybe win 35 games. I personally think they would only win 30. I think they would go 30-52 without De'Aaron Fox. I've talked about this, and I'm going to continue to talk about this. The Kings do not have a legitimate backup point guard. They just don't.
No.
No disrespect to Davion Mitchell, but when he has to start, you're in trouble. Okay?
No.
The Kings don't have anyone that can start. And that's, by the way, Ryan, not that atypical around the league. There are a lot of teams that would have
Sure.
trouble finding a point guard to get the job done when their starter's out. I mean, the Kings can't win without Fox, plain and simple.
No, they can't. And in the past, they've played decent without him. But yeah, it's a glaring spot. And the backup point guard role, Grant, you asked so much of Malik Monk already, but not having somebody else that can be on the floor with him that can make Malik more of a threat, that makes it tough. And one thing I want to point out about Jamal Murray, let me pose this question to you. Because we see all these other elite point guards around the league that have good big men around them or have a good forward. And the two thrive together. And you saw in the first 3 meetings, Denver only shot a tad above 31% above the 3-point line. Jamal's back tonight, much better. But I'm going to argue Jamal Murray uses Jokic much better than De'Aaron Fox uses Sabonis.
Great point. Fabulous point. And we saw it in the playoffs last year on center stage, particularly in the finals. I don't think there's any question about that. I think it's a great point. And I think that's why I'm not so sure that Denver's not the best team in the West when they have their full roster. And that's ahead of Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and whoever else is in their way. I'm not so sure, and the Clippers, I'm not so sure they're not still the team to beat in the West when they're healthy.
Yeah, I'm with you, Grant. I mean, you can't count them out. I mean,
No.
if they're there, they're going to be dangerous. That team is just the way they're lined up. They can almost play any style of basketball. You looked at how they played in the first half. The Kings made them run a little bit. Then they combat you with the size. So that's just what makes a great team, Grant. They can adjust. They can adjust.
And with the loss, the Kings are now back to 8th in the West, and they play the best team in the West next, Minnesota. I would have to assume that Fox will play, considering he was a full participant this morning in shoot around and try to play tonight, but then sat it out. I got to believe 48 hours from now, he'll be back on the court. If he's not on the court, the Kings will get blown out. Okay. If he's on the court, I think the Kings have a 45% chance of winning the game because I think they have proven that they can play with Minnesota this year. They beat them earlier this year in Minnesota. Do you know that Minnesota has 6 home losses this year and 22 wins? One of their home losses is to Sacramento. So, the Kings have shown good resiliency this year, bouncing back from bad games. If they're healthy, I think they'll make it a game on Friday. I don't think they'll win, but I think they'll make it a game.
It's all going to depend on De'Aaron Fox and that knee. The one thing that I will say just from my own personal experiences with similar injuries when you bang knees with somebody, it is a pain tolerance thing, and those things are painful, Grant. So even if he does play, you got to think it's going to affect the pace in which the Kings play at. And that was one of the things that hurt Minnesota.
That's a great point. It would. So we'll see. Minnesota was down big tonight. They came back and they beat Memphis. The final there was 110-101. Dallas won. New Orleans lost. New Orleans lost at Indiana 123-114. And Dallas, after their crushing defeat to Cleveland, they ended up going and winning at Toronto. Just to show you about the NBA, Cleveland, after that great shot by Strus, they lost to Chicago tonight in double overtime. That's life in the NBA. But tonight, too much Denver, too much Jamal Murray, not enough Kings without De'Aaron Fox. Again, I don't know what else to say. The Kings are not a good team without De'Aaron Fox. They're just not. They're not a good team.
Yep. Again, I just don't think there's anybody that can even come close to stepping into those shoes.
No.
Not even come close. Not even the same style of player. And that's where the Kings run into a problem.
And in all fairness to Monty McNair, I'm not so sure there's a player that's out there that was available to trade deadline that could do that, right?
It's a great point, Grant. There might not be a player out there at the past 2 trade deadlines that could have done that.
That's exactly right. Oh, man.
Hey,
people, here's a message. Why isn't JaVale McGee playing? Len did okay, but can't rebound either. You know what? Wouldn't have mattered. Okay. JaVale McGee's not going to make a difference in this game. Let's not overvalue JaVale McGee. Okay.
Yeah, you guys, I think the biggest thing that I want Kings fans to take away from tonight, the Kings had to throw everything against the wall tonight and try to see if something stuck, and nothing stuck tonight. This was a tall task walking into Denver.
Listen, when you're 0-3 against the defending champs and Michael Malone with his dislike for Vivek Ranadive, and you have Jamal Murray now playing, I mean, you got to be realistic, folks. All right? You don't have De'Aaron Fox. Not good. And I'll tell you what else. I keep on talking about this, but I'm going to talk about it again. Of the top 9 teams in the Western Conference, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Kings have the worst point differential by far. It's not even close. Okay?
Yes.
And defensively, they continue to be awful. And I keep saying this, that point differential stat does not lie. When you are 33-25, which is a good record, let's call it the way it is. In this Western Conference, 33-25 is a good record. And you only have a positive point differential of plus 0.3, that is not good. It's not good. Not good.
Yeah, you're right, Grant. And I was going to say, I do want to point out a little bit, and you're spot on about that. Optimism in Sabonis's last 15 games coming into tonight, he was averaging a triple-double, but the Kings, they were also playing much better basketball, Grant. They were scoring in their wins during that time, Grant. 9 wins, 122 points, and a little bit of change. That's more than the Kings team scored last year. So although it's a tall task and we're kind of looking around and saying, where do the Kings stop the bleeding now? They really haven't been playing terrible the last 15.
Great point. I want to get to this question. Keegan Murray is real good. And the broadcast I watched said he smirked towards the Nuggets bench after dunking. Then Brown sat him out like what? I can't comment on that. I didn't really notice that.
Yeah, I didn't catch that either. I mean, if Keegan smirked, I know Katie made a comment about it. It would have been like one of the first smirks he's done since being a King on the court. I'm surprised you guys aren't talking more about the rotation in the second half, how Brown called off the dogs, and then Sabonis was one double-double short, or one rebound short of a double-double, and they go back in. Grant, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are the game was over, and had he left Sabonis in and Sabonis got hurt, that's all we would be talking about on the post-game show right now. I'm not into keeping players on the floor for individual accolades when the games are over. I'm not. That's not the way, to me, the game's supposed to be played. I don't think Sabonis cares. He cares that the team lost, but I don't think he cares that he was taken out of the game. I think he accepts that.
Yeah.
Again, what would we be talking about, Ryan, if Sabonis stayed in trying to get a rebound or what have you, and he ended up spraining an ankle or getting hit on the hand, or that's all we would be talking about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of got talked about last year when he got left in and got hurt late in the game. I think the bigger thing is I would have hated, and this is strictly Grant, I'm taking analyst balanced out of it. I would have hated to see Sabonis's double-double streak end to a triple-double, a complete blowout loss to the Denver Nuggets. Jokic gets the triple-double. You see the headlines, right? It goes hand in hand with what Sabonis has been getting from the national media this year. So in that sense, I'm being greedy and saying I'm glad that didn't happen.
All right. Somebody said Brown waved the white flag too early. I personally
Yes.
disagree. The game was over.
But then you don't bring him back. Then you don't bring him back.
You know what? Very fair criticism. I'm okay with that. You're right. Why did he come back in the game? Fair criticism. But this game was over with about 6 minutes to go in the third quarter.
Yes.
The game was over.
You brought Mason Jones, Kessler Edwards in. It was, and that was early in the fourth. But yeah, it was, they had a 20-point lead, Grant, probably within 5-6 minutes, I want to say.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay. Well, again, these are fair questions. These are fair questions. If you're going to wave the white flag, then why to put the guys back in like Sabonis? Fair, very fair question.
Certainly. Hey, we want to hear from you tonight. If you got a take on that, give us a call. It's in the link to call is in the pinned comment. You can also scan the QR code on the screen. Condog, welcome to the show tonight. What do you got for us?
First positive is we get to go to bed early, and that's it.
Yes.
There you go.
There you go.
But yeah, Grant, you've preached it all season about the backup point guard, and if this offseason we don't get signed a solid backup point guard, I'm gonna come into the next season not as high expectations as this season, because there's gonna be there is a lot of flaws on this team, and it really does start there, because when Fox is out, we again are, we're like the Houston Rockets, probably 25 wins right now, maybe 20.
Well, I wouldn't compare. The Rockets are in a completely. The Rockets are still in a rebuilding mode.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand the point you're trying to make, but I don't know if I would compare it to the Rockets because they are in a rebuilding mode. I've been saying this now, Ryan and Condog. I've been saying this for now 2 full seasons. I'm well aware you're not going to get a De'Aaron Fox type of backup point guard, but I'm also aware that what you have on your roster is not going to work in the NBA. And there are much, and I want to say the word much. There are much better options out there than what you get from Mitchell. All right, there just are.
Yeah, and another stat, compared to the top 10 teams in the West, currently out of the last 10 games, we are the only team with below 500. We're 4-6 in our last 10, where everyone else is at least 6-4, 8-2. So that could be dangerous that the rest of them are getting hot, especially the Warriors right now.
Yeah, but those teams haven't played the schedule that the Kings have played. The Kings have had murderous row here the last 10 games. And unfortunately, the teams that they really were supposed to beat, the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lakers, Hornets. Yeah. All of them.
Bingo.
Yeah, but the Hornets weren't in the last 10 games. The point I'm trying to make is if you look at the last 10 games that the Kings have played and where the games have been, I don't know this for a fact. I'm just using this off the top of my head. Yeah. I would garner to say it's the toughest 10-game stretch of any team in the NBA. I would just wager that there's no team that has played a tougher schedule in the last 10 games than Sacramento.
Yeah, but we also didn't have a miscue with the Miami game. No Jimmy Butler, no Hero. We did have a miscue there. Yeah.
I understand. But again, if I'm looking at the last 10 games that Sacramento was played, I do not think, and again, I don't know this because I don't have everyone's schedule in front of me. Okay. Yeah. All I'm saying is if I can bring this up, if I'm looking at the last 10 games that the Sacramento Kings have played, including tonight. Okay. And I'm going to go in order from tonight and I'm going to back it up. All right. So, all right. Denver, Miami, at the Clippers, home San Antonio, at Denver, at Phoenix, at Oklahoma City, and Denver, Detroit. How many games is that? Are you counting them for me, Rhino? Because I'm trying to.
Cleveland would have been 10 games. Cleveland is the cutoff. So
Okay.
10 games is
all right. So if I start from there, Ryan, at Cleveland, one of the best teams in the East, at Detroit, again, Denver at home, at Oklahoma City, at Phoenix, at Denver, all really good teams. San Antonio at home, not good. At the Clippers, one of the best teams in the league. Miami, very good when healthy, but they didn't have a lot of players. And then tonight at Denver. Again, I got to figure, Ryan, there aren't too many teams that have had a 10-game stretch like that.
No, Grant, there's not. You're absolutely spot on. You make a brilliant point, but there's not too many let's say good teams, good to great teams, Grant, that won't have a stretch like this in their schedule. It's going to happen inevitably. It might not be at the end of the schedule, but here's the problem. Those good to great teams, they haven't backed themselves into a corner by having the bad losses the Kings have. So these games now become must win much earlier. So
those teams don't lose to Detroit at home.
No.
Yeah, they don't.
The Kings' room for error is this.
Hey, Corn Dog, I've been saying this all year. I think the Kings are a good team. I think they're a good team.
Yeah, I would agree.
But they're nothing more than a good team. They're not going to win in the playoffs. They may not even make the playoffs. In this conference, the way everyone looks, they may not make the playoffs. I think Kings fans need to have a real firm understanding of this.
Yep.
This Kings team could have a good year and not make the playoffs. That's very possible.
Yeah, it actually is. I mean, again, the Warriors are now back on fire, and the Lakers are right there at our heels too. And though they still have LeBron James and Steph Curry, and we don't. We just don't.
Thank you, buddy.
All right.
We appreciate the call, Con Dog.
I called him Corn Dog. I'm sorry. Con Dog. I'm sorry. I felt like I was at the state fair. Corn Dog. Sorry, Con Dog. Con Dog.
Corn Dog at the state fair.
I owe you a big time apology. So it's sincere. I apologize.
All right. I think he's going to take it. We'll see. If he doesn't put his arms up next time.
I just saw him raise his arms for me. Okay. That's good. Yeah.
All right. We're good. Hey, Grant, I don't know if you know this, but Chang, who we're going to bring up in a second, he called last post-game show, and he was actually the motivation for my King's Court podcast I did either yesterday or the day before.
Oh, nice.
So his call was fabulous. Made me think about the Kings a different way. Chang, give it to us
what's
again.
up, buddy?
Hey, Ryan. Hey, Grant. And Ryan, great podcast. I was listening on my walk. So again, thanks for the shout out. But I have a take for you both, and I wonder if you agree or disagree. Because that conversation we had last time, Ryan, it made me start to realize that we brought the same players back, but we didn't bring the same team back. And what I mean by that is I think Mike Brown is trying to change the identity of this team. Again, he keeps preaching, physicality and pace. And for me, I felt that Mike Brown is trying to make a correction from how the playoffs went last year, where he realized that style play of the regular season last year, it's not going to translate into the playoffs. And I think, to me, what I'm curious is that, I feel like last year Mike Brown was, I'm going to do my best and find a system that works for this team, and we're going to make the playoffs. And I feel like this year was, okay, now this team needs to fit into the system I want to play. And I almost kind of feel like that's why there's so many inconsistencies, because I think it's clear that certain players can't play the style Mike Brown wants to play. And I almost want to give a pass to the season because I go, okay, obviously it's clear that this team is not going to be able to play the style Mike Brown wants, and changes are going to have to happen for us to play the style Mike Brown wants. Because I think what's really interesting this season is we have highs and lows where it seems we can play that style Mike Brown wants only maybe in a quarter. After that, we just fall apart again, and we can't play that style because I think it's so taxing on our players that we don't have the personnel. So I was wondering what you guys do.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Kings can only beat you one way. There's only one way they can beat you. And they're going to have to when they shoot well and they outscore you. They can't beat you any other way. They can't beat you with physicality. They can't beat you with defense. They can't beat you in a half-court game. They can only beat you running and gunning and shooting threes. That's how they beat you. And if they don't do that, more times than not, they're going to lose. And I think you're right about Mike Brown. He doesn't have the personnel to really play the way he wants to play. He just doesn't. But, you have to go with what you have. Ryan, you and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, and Jerry talks about this. Just put your 5 best players on the floor and try to outscore the other team.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, okay. Okay, so go with me here. I'll try not to be long-winded, but I think Chang brings up a good point in this sense. If you're going to run the team back, and I think it's a fair question to ask, if you're going to run the team back, you have to embrace what the team is best at, and that's offense. Mike Brown and nobody else in this organization, I don't think, predicted the offensive outburst that was coming last year. Because if you remember Mike Brown's introductory press conference, I remember a lot of talk about defense. Remember, Mike Brown has had 2 teams that he's coached an 82-game season for, and they have been number 1 at defending the three-point line in the NBA. So, is there some friction there? And how far does that reach? Because there has, Grant and Chang, that to me, to my eye, there has been many less set plays this year for this Sacramento Kings team on offense.
I just want to chime in. I think my biggest red alert or red flag was, Grant and Ryan, do you know why was Chris Duarte getting the starting spot over Kevin Huerter in the beginning of the season? I was so confused about that.
Not the beginning of the season. Towards 1/3 of the season after Huerter was really struggling and got hurt for a little while.
I think there was rumors that they wanted him to start already in the preseason, but then I think Chris Duarte got hurt. So there was already rumors about him losing his starting spot. But I'm not sure. But there was already rumors about that. And I guess I'm curious because it seemed Mike Brown already wanted to kind of change the lineup. And so it is kind of interesting that we're planning to bring the same team back, but you want to make major changes to the lineup already. That was a little interesting already.
First of all, Chris Duarte is not a starter. So anyone that thinks that Chris Duarte, and I'm not saying you were saying this, you're making the point, and I understand where you're coming from. And by the way, I do appreciate your knowledge. You're a hell of a caller, and I hope that you can join us more often. But Chris Duarte is not a starter in the NBA. He's just not. He's a role player at best. That's what he is. So listen, is the roster perfect? No, it's not perfect. Would Mike Brown like some different pieces? Yes, but it's not as easy as we make it seem when we're doing talk shows about get this guy and get that guy. This team is still growing. Last year was a big step. They're still very young, and their nucleus now is De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Keegan Murray, and they're all very young, relatively speaking. And I just think the vision of this team is you keep those 3 with Monk maybe being your 4th if you can keep him after this year in free agency, and then you build from there. But if you have that nucleus, you're pretty good, and you should be pretty good.
No, and I agree. And I think this is just to calm a lot of the fans, because I think we want to jump the gun and really hope that we were going to make that, second round, appearance. And I think just take this year as, a developmental year, because we see Keegan's jump, we see Fox do a little bit better, and we see Sabonis do a little bit better. And I really think that if we're going to have that criticism, it's really going to be next season, because I think it's clear the system Mike Brown wants to play, and can we get that personnel to kind of match what he wants to play? Because I do agree that when we play the style Mike Brown wants to play, we do look like an amazing team.
Oh, sometimes.
Sometimes when the highs are highs, but again, the lows are very low. So.
But and Ryan, we talk about this on every show. Everything you said is true, but the word "if" does not apply to this team. This team is what they are. There's only a little more than 20 games left. What are we down to? 24 games? I don't have the math in front of me.
24 games.
So we have seen now the Kings play. What is that? 58 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
This team is what they are. They're not all of a sudden going to start change. They are who they are. They're going to have really good wins in these final 24, and they're going to have really bad losses. And they're going to look really bad on some nights, and they're going to look really good on other nights. Why? Because that's how they play. Because they're a jump shooting team. They can't win when their shots aren't falling. Plain and simple. I mean, this is one of the easiest teams in the league for me to figure out. There are teams that I watch that I can't really figure out. I got the Kings down pat. I mean, I've been saying this all year. They're just not anything more than a good team. and they're not going to win in the playoffs if they make the playoffs because of the style that they play. And this is what you're getting to, Chang. Their style, I think, is not really conducive to long-term success. Which why, and I don't think we have to talk about it on February 28th.
Yeah,
I do believe, and I've said this a month ago, and I'm going to continue to say it. I firmly believe if the Kings miss the playoffs this year, you're going to see big, not minor, you're going to see big changes in this summer with the Kings. And those big changes could also be your coach. So just do not discount that because Mike Brown was the coach of the year last year. I know this owner, okay? I know this owner very well. And I know how this owner thinks. And I know how impulsive he is. And I'm just telling you right now, if this Kings team misses the playoffs this year, do not be surprised if there are big time changes.
Grant, everything you said is spot on. You have been right. And with Vivek, yeah, nothing would surprise us. Chang, great call. Great call.
Okay.
Again.
Thank you so much.
Hey, hey, Ryan, next time I miss the show, you ought to have him do the show with you.
He knows his stuff. Grant, he made me think. And not like that Bowling Green math you just did on the season this year. I mean, he really made me think.
He's good.
He's good.
I want to get back to my point, what I just made. For this franchise this year, not to make the playoffs, and I know the West is a lot better, so I firmly acknowledge that. This would be a step back this year, okay? If you end up being 7 or 8 and losing the play-in and don't make the playoffs, I don't care how you want to break down this season. You had, once again, to this point, very good luck with injuries. This would be, in my opinion, a step back. This franchise, after missing the playoffs for 16 years, can now not take a step back with this owner. I'm just telling you, be careful.
Why? Because he got a taste of the playoffs?
Yes, and because his expectations of this team have always been far-fetched and ridiculous, okay? And I'm just telling you, be careful of that.
When you put it that way, and I agree 100% with you, if the Kings do not make the playoffs, they have not met any expectations, regardless of what they were for you this season. But it's such a critical time, Grant, to be blowing it up because you got Fox locked up, you've got Domas locked up, Malik. There's a max in which you can offer him. So you want to have team chemistry there to sell him at the very least. And then you've got Keegan Murray coming up, right? So if you make drastic changes, De'Aaron Fox might want out, right? Keegan Murray might not want to be here. Next thing you know, you might be the Pacers with a Domas and nothing else around him.
And you got to be careful if you make big changes. Not because I'm wrong to compare Sacramento to Milwaukee, but Milwaukee was a championship caliber team with a ring, and they made a big change. And the player that is not on that team now has made Boston much better and made Milwaukee much worse, or not much worse, but worse. I shouldn't say much worse. So you always do have to be careful. But to go to your point there, Ryan, you have De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis in their prime. And by the way, just because the Kings lost tonight, I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs. So I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying.
You're so
But if you have Keegan Murray, who's having a very good year, right? Mm-hmm. With Fox and Sabonis, who even though they weren't on the All-Star team this year, are All-Star caliber players. We saw them on the All-Star team last year. I know how this owner thinks. He's going to think, well, we already have the pieces and we can't win with this. We got to go in a different direction. I'm just telling you. You just watch.
Okay. So let's have fun with this. You know the owner decent. What do you think the most likely drastic move would be?
Personally, I think it would be the coach.
Okay. I don't think it would be the coach.
I'm just telling you. You be just watch.
You think it would be the coach?
Just telling you. This is the guy that fired Michael Malone for no reason.
That's a great point. And what's he do? Goes on to win a championship, builds a program. It's a
So,
great point.
again, I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying Mike Brown's going to lose his job. I'm just saying that if this team, and by the way, I hate to be all doom and gloom because I think the Kings aren't going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I do. I do. I think they're going to be in the playoffs.
Well, play in, right?
Play in, yeah.
Yes.
Which isn't the playoffs. But I don't know how you feel, Ryan, but I keep looking at the standings and I'm projecting Golden State and LA to be 9th and 10th. And if you lose, if you're a 7-8 and you lose that first game, you're going to have to play one of those two teams to make it into the playoffs. You're going to have to play either Golden State or the Lakers. The winner of that 9-10, the loser is out. You want to go 48 minutes with the playoffs on the line, going against Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson? Or do you want to go 48 minutes against LeBron James and Anthony Davis? I'm sorry. I don't like the Kings' chances. I don't like it. I don't like that scenario. That's why these losses to Detroit and Charlotte and Portland and Miami, when they have half their team out, are devastating. Because if you're not in the top 6 and you lose that first game, because the winner of the 7-8 is automatically the 7th seed. Yep. If you lose that game, you're probably not making the playoffs.
Totally with you, Grant. I mean, let's put it, I don't think, and you know how good Vegas is, I don't think there's a single odds maker in Vegas that could accurately project what the Kings would do in a 1-game sample size. I don't think Mike Brown could. I don't think anyone could.
Agreed. What did we see last year in a winner-take-all game in Sacramento in Game 7? What happened? One of the very best players of his generation took over the game. Correct?
Correct. Now,
why would I think he wouldn't do it again? And why would I think LeBron and Anthony Davis wouldn't play A+ games in that same type of a scenario?
You wouldn't. I'm with you 100%. Short of the Kings coming out and having a blitz of 3-pointers, what are they going to do? And even then, to me, Grant, and I'll pose this to you, even when the Kings come out and are 7 tonight, they made 7 threes in the first quarter. Yep. I'm still uneasy watching this team because ultimately the 3-ball is going to probably slow down. And it's like, what are they going to do? And at least for me, Grant, I don't know what that first option is. Do you have one?
No. No. When their 3-ball is not falling, no, I don't. I do know what an option is, though, and it's New Works Plumbing. They are a great option when you have plumbing needs and repairs. If you go to sackserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen, you will be very happy. They do a phenomenal job, and they have a fix for you. And they're available around the clock 24/7 for all of your plumbing needs and repairs. Just go to sackserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. New Works Plumbing, they've got a fix for you. All right, so back to what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
If the Kings should lose to Minnesota, okay?
Yes.
They're going to come back home no better than 8th place. They can't. They would be 8th and could only maybe be 1 game ahead of Golden State in the loss column.
Scary.
Here. And so I keep on saying 7-8, 7-8, 7-8. Maybe I'm being too optimistic here. Could I be looking at a Kings team fall all the way to 9 or 10? I think they're better than that, Ryan. I just think they're better than that.
So I guess that's where what makes you think they would maintain and tread water enough to fall into the top 6 places right now based off of the way they've played up until this point? I mean, everything screams at best playing screams.
They're not going to be a top 6 team based on one stat and one stat only, their point differential. That does not lie. And because of that stat, which is by far, but just go to the standings, everyone, and look. By far, the worst point differential of any team in the top 9. The Warriors, for example, are behind Sacramento, and their point differential is plus 1.8. The Dallas Mavericks plus 1.3. New Orleans plus 4.1. That number does not lie. And for that reason and that reason alone, I do not think the Kings are going to end up being a top 6 team in the West.
Yeah, I'm with you, Grant. The one piece of optimism I would hold out, and everything really does hinge on De'Aaron's knee, and how soon he's able to get back to the court, hopefully as soon as Minnesota. But in the last 15 games coming into tonight, the Kings were closing that gap. They were playing better basketball. They were 9-6. In fact, you know that big variance I always talked about this season between the amount of points they score when they win versus the amount of points when they score when they lose? They had brought that back to single digits. It was right about 8 or 9.
It was
and
much better.
So it was much better, but that gives you optimism. But at the same time, as a Kings fan, you think Domantas Sabonis just had 15 triple doubles in a row.
Yeah.
And it's not better than that.
I know.
And De'Aaron Fox had a big game here and there. Tough.
Hey, Teddy, get the crap out of your ears. Okay. Did I say that the Kings can't beat the Timberwolves? I just said the opposite. I said that if they have De'Aaron Fox on the floor, I'll give them a 45% chance of going in there and winning against the best team in the West. I don't know what people listen to when I talk. I really don't. I'm not projecting them to beat Minnesota, but of course they can beat Minnesota. I mean, they already beat them once. They gave them their first home loss of the year. I didn't say they can't beat Minnesota. I said I don't think they're going to beat Minnesota, but if they have Fox on the floor, I give them a legitimate chance, and I think they'll be in the game. That's what I said. Do you not hear what I say, or do you speak a different language than me? Maybe that's it. Maybe you speak a different language. That's quite possible.
Teddy, call in. Let us know. Call in like Cam. I mean, Cam called a post-game show once. Cam, what's up? Welcome back to the show with Grant and Rhino.
I said I don't think they're going to beat Minnesota, but if they have Fox on the floor, I give them
Hey, Cam, turn down. Oh, he might try again. All right.
While he's doing that, I want to tell you about Bennett's. All right. And I love talking about Bennett's and their prime seafood and steak. 3 locations, Sacramento, Roseville, and this West Side Grill in Rockland at the Blue Oaks Town Center. Prime seafood and steak. On the weekend, they have their brunch. They specialize in their prime rib, which is phenomenal. Over 60 different types of wine available by the glass with their happy hour specials during the week. I'm telling you, folks, if you have not been to Bennett's, check it out. Go to Bennett'sRestaurants.com, make a reservation, and more. That's Bennett'sRestaurants.com.
All right, let's give this another try. Hey, you know the New York Prime at Bennett's?
It's my favorite.
That plate that it comes on. You know that it's served on?
Yeah, that wooden plank too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe Brian, can you hook your guys up and maybe bring the steak on it too, please? Yeah. We're gonna try this again. Let's go to Cam. Cam, you get everything worked out?
Can you hear me?
We got you. You're on with Grant and Rhino.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Grant, first of all, miss you on the call.
Thank you.
Greatly. You know, I don't want to hate on anybody or do any of that talk, but Grant and Jerry, the best of the best.
Thank you.
So I worked tonight, did not watch the game, but I have the box score pulled up, and it seems like Fox was out. Seems like mostly of the same stuff. Harrison Barnes, very inconsistent. Keegan Murray, 21. Let's see. I mean, there's not enough production, and even in the starting lineup, I can't even see any production.
There wasn't.
And Duarte with 18 is very surprising to me because he's done nothing all season offensively.
Duarte played a hell of a game. This team would have been blown out by probably a lot worse if Duarte didn't play.
But here's the deal. You're making the point, Cam, and I think you're spot on. Your starting backcourt tonight of Fox and Mitchell were invisible. They combined for 9 points. Come on, 9 points. But
what would you expect?
They didn't play a lot. I mean, in all fairness, Mitchell played, I think, 16 minutes, and Herter played, I believe, 18 minutes. So they didn't play a lot, but still, the reason why they didn't play a lot is they weren't doing anything.
and I see the time on the bench, and it's like Keegan Murray and DeMontis are 33 minutes, 32 minutes, and the rest of them are kind of equally distributed.
Yeah.
It's why was Fox DMP tonight?
Bruised knee,
Bruised knee.
contusion
Okay.
on the knee.
He
Okay.
banged knees with Jaime Jaquez against the Heat.
Okay. Yeah, I came on last night and I was just very upset at how Grant had said in the previous show this should be a layup. This should
Yeah.
be an absolute layup. Jaquez and what we have as pieces, they should not be able to score as easily as they are.
Yeah.
We got the whole Nuggets 32 points from Jamal Murray. I mean, Davion Mitchell is supposed to be a defensive god, right? And Jamal Murray's dropping 32 on him. And that's not completely on Davion Mitchell because I understand there's switches that happen. But we don't have the team to take the next step. Me and Ryan were talking about this yesterday. We don't have that team to take the next step, and we don't have, near the depth. I mean, I said yesterday I expect more from Leak Monk. He dropped 14. That's fine. 6 for 16 is awful. Alex Len got some time. I said yesterday, why isn't JaVale McGee playing? What's the deal?
What's JaVale McGee going to do? JaVale McGee's wouldn't have made any difference in the game tonight. JaVale McGee is way overvalued. He's way overvalued.
I feel JaVale McGee has an inside presence. What I've seen from JaVale McGee is his ability to protect the rim because of his length. And Alex Len may be better than JaVale McGee. But
hey, Cam, what? I don't mean to cut you off, but what I feel you are seeing is somebody that's kind of a rim protector on a roster that doesn't really have any rim protectors, because every block you see from JaVale, almost you see 2 or 3 plays where he's flown by, or you see 2 or 3 plays where he's completely out of position and costs the Kings.
Yeah, I could see that. I just don't see how Harrison Barnes is in the starting lineup. Our roster is very, like, without Fox, it's very like haywire. If Keegan Murray, our second-year player, is our highest scoring player, that's a problem. For a playoff team, that's a problem. And we got, I don't know who we have coming up, but these are important games because we know how close. Well, exactly. So that's going to be an issue. If Fox is out for Minnesota, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, they won't win. If Fox is not playing, the Kings will get destroyed in Minnesota. If Fox plays, I give him a legitimate chance to compete and win the game. If he doesn't play, they'll lose by 20 or more points.
Exactly. It's always a 20-point loss, or a once in a while we'll win by 10, but mostly our wins come from 5 or 6 or 4 points. It's not like we're blowing out teams. We're not running them off the floor. Now we dropped to 8 seed. Lost 2 in a row. I've been a diehard Kings fan. I'm 26. I've been a diehard Kings fan since 97. And I've been watching these games with C-Web.
Timeout.
Grant,
you're 26.
I know. I was doing.
So you were a diehard Kings fan when you were an infant?
Well, when I was
okay.
He had the bobbleheads in his crib,
yes,
Grant.
Yeah,
okay. Absolutely, Grant. Absolutely, Grant.
I love it.
When I was 3 years old and able to fathom the game of basketball, I was a Kings fan.
I love it. Hey, Cam, I
Here,
appreciate
dude.
you calling into the show. I appreciate your love for the team. And thank you very much. I'm just going to say this, Ryan. What Cam is talking about is what we talk about on a fairly regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
This team is Jekyll and Hyde, and they're inconsistent. And that's why, despite the fact that they have a good record of 33-25, which is good, they only have a point differential of plus 0.3 because they're Jekyll and Hyde and they're inconsistent. And that's why I can't get excited about a Kings team should they make the playoffs doing anything, because I don't think they will.
Well, that's the tricky thing for a Kings fan, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't think they will. That's the logical side of you. But then on some nights, you see them come out and just play. It's arguably the Clippers, their best team performance of the season. So then you're like,
Without
well,
Paul George.
what? Correct. Great point, Grant. Without Paul George, that would have made a big difference. You wouldn't have been doubling Kawhi Leonard. Let's put it that way.
I thought their best performance of the season was at Minnesota earlier in the year. I thought that was their best game they played this year.
Nah, I completely see that. I think that is a valid pick. That was mine for a long time. The Clippers to me was the best Kings team performance. It wasn't their best
I
win.
agree.
It's their best team
I
performance.
agree. But then 24 hours later, we saw an awful performance against a depleted team.
Okay.
And at the start of the homestand, we saw a pathetic performance against the worst team in the league in the Pistons. And those are the games that drive you freaking crazy.
Okay, I'm going to pose this question to you. I've already gone on record with what I think strictly about this season. We're talking about the team being inconsistent on the court, Grant. Has the team been inconsistent from a head coaching standpoint?
Yes, I think that Mike Brown has had an inconsistent season. I think there are too many times where I believe he's been outcoached. I thought he was outcoached by Eric Spoelstra in the Miami game. I thought it was very apparent. I thought that the coaching moves that Eric Spoelstra made were top shelf, and I didn't see Mike Brown. I thought he lost that chess game in a big time way.
Yeah, have you seen it all season, or did that one just stick out to you more?
No, I've seen it more this year than I saw it last year, if that makes sense.
Yes, me too.
Yep. All right. Hey,
It's
I want to tell you, go ahead. No, please finish.
I was going to say it's an interesting topic to dig in, and we've had great calls, but we're 47 minutes in. We got to tell them about the sponsors.
Oh, yeah. And one of them is Calusa Sunrise and the project from Blazona Development. Get out there and check out this phenomenal Sunrise Landing. And if you go to calusasunrise.com, you can look at all of their models. There are 6 to choose from. They are beautiful. Remember, there's no Melrose, there's no homeowners out at Sunrise Landing. So if you go to calusasunrise.com, you can check everything out. Make a visit from Blazona Development. Again, that is calusasunrise.com. Just check it out. And we thank Blazona Development for their sponsorship right here. All right. So any final thoughts, my friend, as we say so long after this awful game without De'Aaron Fox and Minnesota 48 hours ahead? What are your final thoughts?
Nothing on the basketball game or the Kings. I think we've covered it. I thought you've had some great points. Really, my big final thought is thank all of you who've tuned in tonight, and thank all of you who have tuned in this season and just this past week. We have 17,000 live just the other night. So thank you all very much. We so much appreciate it, and keep the calls coming.
And if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate it. So the Kings, not tonight. We'll see what they do on Minnesota. Hey, don't forget tomorrow at 4:00, right here on If You Don't Like That, Jerry Reynolds will be joining us. That's at 4:00 tomorrow. Make it a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. No light the beam tonight. The final 117-96 Nuggets. Bye-bye.